Well, good morning. Good morning. I am Reverend Karen Lewis. I am here, and although I think this is our fourth Sunday that we have the sanctuary open, it is the energy in this room is palpable today, is it not? Can we feel it? And I trust that everyone at home can feel this too, because we feel you. We feel your presence here. And it is not just something that we say, but we feel the connection of our community on Sunday mornings, on Saturday mornings when we get together and walk a labyrinth, and all those emails and texts. That is how we build community together. And that is what we do here. So I'm going to invite all of us to just take our hands together and rub them for a moment. Please do that at home with us. Let's do it all together. Because whether you're participating at home or here in the sanctuary, I trust that you feel this sense of vibration that is happening everywhere here. And now we just breathe it in. Let's just center it into our very being. Thank you. Let it be. Let it be. The eternal ebb and flow. When that particular title came to me, I was all excited. This is what I heard. The eternal ebb and flow. Have you ever had that? Have you ever had that? Something inspires you, and all that you're connecting with is the flow, the goodness of it. Life has both sides, does it not? I love how we often invite people to just breathe in. Just breathe in. Breathe in some more. Yes, it doesn't work, right? We have to inhale and we have to exhale. We have to receive, we have to let go. We have to stand there in front of the ocean and welcome the flow, and we have to be okay with letting it recede. And that is not just the truth of the ocean, that is the truth of everything in our life. And I don't know about you, but I am much better at the flow than at the ebb. Anybody with me on that one? Yeah. And I think especially in a teaching like ours is, right? Our teaching so focuses, and that's a criticism we have often from the outside, that this teaching just focuses on the getting the good. Getting the good. But it's not. When we deepen into this science of mind, what we realize that it is really a making welcome everything that is. That is what it is. And I love how wonderful the meditation this morning spoke to that, as did the reading of beloved Reverend Leslie. So the eternal ebb and flow. If I ask you to go to that place within where you know that you know that you know that you are one with the allness of life, perhaps allowing eyes to close or gazes to soften, I know that we all have a place like that. For some of you, it might be in the woods, on a mountaintop. It might be riding a motorcycle, playing a golf game. It matters not what it is. It is that place where we feel that the ever-givingness of life is bestowed upon us in that moment where we feel so closely to the divine that there's nothing we question. Does everyone have a place like that? Yeah. Whenever we participate in a guided meditation, that's where we go, right? Right there. Well, I have a place like that. For me, it is the ocean. It is the ocean. I see a lot of nods here, especially people who are choosing to move to the ocean are nodding very vehemently. But it's the ocean for me. And so last weekend I had a couple days off, so we went to the ocean. I did what I always do. I prepare myself. I take all the precautions because of the times that we are in. I set an intention, to be present to what is, which in my mind meant the flow, the goodness. And then something happened that shifted that picture that I had. Now, I don't know if that ever happened in your life. I don't know if you have ever had plans to travel perhaps this year. Perhaps there was a wedding that was supposed to take place that couldn't. Gatherings with beloveds. Just regular life. It got sidetracked this year, did it not? Yeah. So I just saw this meme on Facebook. I think we have the picture of it. Yeah, those were our expectations, and then that's kind of what happened. I'm going to get out of the way so everybody can see that. Isn't that great? Doesn't that about sums up what we have experienced here? Yeah. Yeah. So then the question that I ask myself and the question that I'm bringing today is, how can we have this experience as a world right now and still claim what our founder, Dr. Ernest Holmes, so beautifully articulated, that we believe in the eternal goodness, the eternal loving kindness, and the eternal givingness of life. How do we bring those things together? How can we stand in the messiness of life and at the same time hold this as the truth that we believe? That is the question, is it not? Yeah. What helped me is to take a look at this natural law of motion. Did you know that, and you do know this, everyone knows this, right? It's a natural law that everything is always in motion. As a matter of fact, Heraclitus, I believe is his name. Karen is laughing because she's in ministerial school and she has to learn these words too. So he said 2,500 years ago, there's nothing permanent except change. There's nothing permanent except change. We all know this, and yet what do we do when change happens? Yeah. We often don't come from this place of saying, oh, yes, yes. There's a big change there that took place. So let's take a closer look at this natural law of motion. Everything flows out and in. Everything has its tides. All things rise and fall. This principle really controls the cycle of life and death, of everything. If you look in nature, if we look at the trees right now, they're giving us such a wonderful example of how beautiful letting go can be, right? All those leaves that are falling down. Everything in nature has a time of expansion and a time of contraction. Every relationship we are in. every community, even our beloved New Vision Center, everything has this motion. It's either expanding or contracting. Those are the only two. There is nothing that stands always still. And then when we take a look within a community such as the New Vision Center, we see different individuals having different experiences. A little later in the talk, I'm going to share a little bit about our labyrinth walk yesterday. And I was just talking this morning with one of the participants who had the realization that everyone was moving at their own pace. And it was different. I think he said he didn't start it as the first one, but he completed as the first one. And so what is helpful when we think about this natural law of motion is to give space within ourselves and within each other to have a different pace, to have a different rhythm. Perhaps it would behoove us to create a tide and ebb schedule for ourselves. You know, it was so great at the ocean. We could look up and could say, oh, tomorrow at 7 a.m., the water will be all up front, so the surface will be very close by, and that would be a good time to go to the ocean. Perhaps we could do that for our own life. But do we do that? Do we schedule time and recognize this is what's happening in my world? I appear to be in an expanding time of my life, and do I schedule time to have self-care? Do I schedule time to give an opportunity to contract when that time naturally comes to an end? I don't know about you, but that's not what I do. I go as the going is good, and then it slows down, and I go even faster. Right? Because we're so darn afraid of the times when we just be. There's this monk that went onto a silent retreat. And when the silent retreat was over, he felt better, calmer, stronger. But he also realized there was something missing. So he went to the teacher and asked what he should do. The teacher suggested that he would go and talk to another monk and ask him a question. And so he went to a monk and he said, how do you find peace? And the monk said, I say yes. To everything that happens, I say yes. I say yes. In our teaching, we call that acceptance, being in acceptance. Every moment, when the going is good and when the going is not so good. Right now, in this moment, are you willing to take a breath and accept everything that is taking place here for you now? In this sanctuary, in your living room, whatever the circumstance is in your life, are you willing to say, yes? Yes. In the Western world, I believe it's a little bit more challenging because we are so darn trained to not do that. We are so darn trained to read the next self-help book, to get better at something, to elevate something more. I do it all the time. And there's nothing wrong with it. And yet, where is the place within where we can allow ourselves to just be? To be. I have found that place right here when I walked through those doors 12 years ago. And I know that some of us have this experience now as we are coming back into the sanctuary, as we're watching these online services, as we are participating in this community. Saying yes. I came across this wonderful book by Anne Morrow Lindbergh, Gifts from the Sea. In it, she says, "We have so little faith in the ebb and flow of life, of love, of relationships. We leap at the flow of the tide and resist its terror, its ebb. We are afraid that it will never return. We insist on permanency, on duration, on continuity, when the only continuity possible in life and in love is in growth, in fluidity. That's the only thing that is possible." So how can we then create in our own lives touchstones, practices, experiences where we are so aware of the eternality of life that we can allow ourselves to feel a little lost as the ebb and flow takes place? As I said yesterday morning, 28 beloveds from this community chose to gather up in Carefree at a labyrinth. There it is. And we had the joy of having a trained labyrinth facilitator walk us through this experience of walking a labyrinth. Sue Powell did an amazing job of setting the container of safety and clarity and wisdom as she shared with us how deep this practice of walking a labyrinth truly is. And so we were asked to set our intentions as we approached the labyrinth. She talked about the 4 R's as you walk through a labyrinth towards its center. It is a time of release, of letting go. And then when you arrive in the center, it is a time of receiving. The walking back is called return. And then comes the reflection time. And I so appreciated this idea that first we are asked to let go, to lay things down. Perhaps our expectations. Perhaps our idea how this is supposed to unfold in my life. Perhaps we were asked to lay down our judgments of another, of ourselves. It was fascinating for me to witness how different people walked through the labyrinth and then afterwards hear the different experiences. They were as varied as the people that were there. And so the question becomes, why was that such a deepening experience for us? I believe it was because that safe container was created and established. And within it, we each were allowed and invited, actually, to have our experience. Kind of like life, isn't it? we are all given the same amount of time every day to do with what we feel is the highest and best to do. And yet how very, very different is life experienced. So I ask us, where do you feel you are in that place of expansion and contraction? That place of ebb and flow, of new beginnings, as the song so beautifully said, and of conscious completions, of letting go. I believe that the benefit is really in waking up to it, in becoming aware of it. Because now that we have this awareness, we can take a look at our life, and if we are in the expanding phase, and if we are adding to our life experience, if we perhaps starting a new position, or having a move, or starting a new relationship, or whatever it is that we are doing, it behooves us, I believe, to schedule some time for giving ourselves the experience of rest and closing within. And contrary, if we are in a time where we feel like I am pulling back, I am protecting, I am, like in winter hibernating, I'm going to hibernate. If we do that, well then it really behooves us to look at that and allow that to take place without blaming ourselves for not doing enough. Every time when we swim against the natural current of life, life becomes harder. And so I invite us all to perhaps close our eyes one more time. And as I ask you to go to that place within where you know that you know that you know that there is one power, ask yourself, how can I learn to live through this ebb tide in more grace? And Morrow Lindbergh says, perhaps this is the most important thing, simply the memory that each cycle of the tide is valid. Each cycle of the wave is valid. One must accept the security of ebb and flow, of intermittency. And so the qualities that come to mind are acceptance, compassion, and perhaps even surrender. Surrendering into what is. I am so grateful that we have a community that we can walk these currents of life out together with. Thank you for being on this journey. And so it is. And so now we do what we do in this teaching so beautifully with this tool that we call a spiritual mind treatment. I invite all the practitioners here in the room, at home, the ministers, please rise, please rise. As we take a breath together, as we recognize the allness of life, that which is greater than I am, the power, the presence, love, peace, harmony, abundance, joy, whatever word works for you. I call it God. And as we breathe into the realization that that is not something that is outside of us, but that is right at the very center of who we are, we allow that connection to take place. We allow that feeling of oneness to rise within us. For we realize there was never, ever a time where the divine wasn't within. Perhaps just a time where we didn't see it. And so we breathe in here. And we allow the goodness of love to wash over us. We allow ourselves to feel the strength of the divine. And we allow ourselves to feel the connection with all people everywhere, all sentient beings. As we recognize that there truly is only one. There's only one. And so from this place of deep knowingness, of being in alignment with the ever-loving kindness of the divine and the gracious givingness, we can affirm that all the prayer requests, all the affirmations that have come forth are indeed made manifest. That these prayers are returned even better than one could imagine. And as I know this truth for myself, I know this truth for Heather and Audrey, for Henry and Molly, for Rick and Joe and Virginia, for Beverly, Nancy, and Mark, for Marjorie, Judy, Rebecca, and Buzz, for Marty, Ron, Sandra, Karen, Susan and Russ, for Darlene, for Bill, for Darren, and for all people who are in alignment with that which is greater than we are. And so in this moment, in this time, we declare all this as truth. As we joyfully anchor into that which is greater than we are, as we let it be, as we let it go, we call it good. And so it is.